My name is Zoe Anderson. I'm 34 years old and work as a communications director at a tech company in Denver, Colorado. One Monday morning, as I was getting ready to leave for the office, I received a text from my mother. "We've changed all the locks on the front door and the gate code. From now on, please don't come back. We no longer feel safe with you around." I froze in the hallway, phone in hand, my fingers trembling with anger. Part of me thought this was a cruel joke. But I knew my mother would never joke like that. Not when she had a chance to strip away any ounce of control I once had. I had been covering the mortgage on that house for 18 months. Nearly $4,800 a month. Over $86,000 in total. Just to keep the home my grandparents left behind. A place I once believed symbolized family. And now, they had kicked me out of the very place I was funding completely. I didn't scream. I didn't call. I simply texted back. "Understood, clever move, but Mom, there's one thing you forgot." I said nothing more. No explanations. I wanted my actions to speak for themselves. To be honest, I should have seen this coming. But when you're the overlooked child in a family, you learn to accept betrayal as routine. I always knew I wasn't the chosen one. My younger sister, Alyssa, was always the little angel in my parents' eyes, even though she's never held a job for more than 6 months or paid her rent on time. I remember the day my parents sat crying in the kitchen, telling me they couldn't keep the house anymore. Debt, bad investments, and countless times bailing Alyssa out of messes had drained them. They begged me to help, and I, foolish enough to think there was still a place for me in this family, agreed. I canceled my plans to buy my own home, said no to vacations, cut every unnecessary expense to afford the monthly mortgage payments. I took on overtime, picked up freelance gigs on weekends, not because I had money to spare, but because I thought if I helped them through the crisis, maybe, just maybe, they'd finally see me differently. Instead, they changed the locks, switched the gate code, and sent a message treating me like an intruder. I couldn't breathe in that moment. It felt like my chest was caving in, a mix of shock and bitterness. No thank you, no explanation, just a cold shove out of their lives. I called my best friend Jenna, who had warned me more than once that my parents were taking advantage of my stability. "It just happened," I said, barely audible. "What happened?" "They changed the locks, sent a text telling me not to come back. They said they don't trust me anymore." Silence. Then Jenna exhaled sharply. "That's it. Zoe, you need to stop letting them treat you like a walking ATM. You've poured over $80,000 into that house. They don't deserve another cent from you." I knew she was right. I'd known it for a long time. But the most painful part wasn't the betrayal. It was realizing just how much I had sacrificed for people who never truly valued me. I sat on the edge of my bed as morning sunlight streamed through the window and lit up the family photo taken one Thanksgiving. I used to think I was preserving tradition, doing the right thing. But that text, it didn't just change the locks. It changed me. I've always known my place in this family. No one ever said it aloud, but every action, every glance made it clearer than words ever could. I was the child they were proud of, but never the one they cherished. Alyssa, my younger sister, is 3 years younger than me, born into fireworks and worship. From the start, she was the little princess in our parents' eyes. Even though she only earned average grades, Dad proudly hung her scribbled drawings in the living room like masterpieces. And me, I earned a full-ride scholarship to a state university, and all I got was a nod and, well, of course, she's the older one. I remember my 10th birthday. Just a small store, bought chocolate cake, candles leaning sideways. But Elisa's birthdays? Grand parties at amusement parks, clowns, magic shows, even outdoor movie screenings. When I got accepted into the honors program in high school, Mom simply said, "That's nice, but don't stress too much about grades. Elisa is the one who needs encouragement." Alyssa's never kept a job for more than 3 months. She's tried being a barista, a retail associate, even ran online ads. Everything ended in quitting. She claimed the world wasn't made for artistic souls like hers, and each time she was unemployed, my parents were the ones to step in, covering her rent, her car, even her credit card debt. Every time I asked, "Why do I always have to handle everything alone while Elisa?" my mother would smile and gently reply, "You're the strong one. Your sister is more fragile. She needs more support." I used to think that was fair. I used to believe it was my duty as the eldest daughter to carry the load. I let it slide when my sister borrowed money and never paid it back. I pretended not to hear my mom call me a walking calculator, cold as a rock, after I refused to fund Elisa's trip to Florida. A work that actually woke me up inside on my first day of college, studying during the day and working at a bookstore in the evenings. Meanwhile, Alyssa lived off our parents and credit cards. I once saw her brag on Instagram, "You only live once, no need to worry about tomorrow." That same day, I was eating instant noodles in my dorm room because I had just paid my dad's hospital bill after a minor accident. And no one knew. I never said a word because I had grown used to sacrificing in silence. I used to believe things would change once I had a stable career, once I became the most successful one in the family. I got promoted to communications director at 30, recognized in a top industry magazine, and was earning a six-figure salary. But my dad just said, "It's just an office job, what's the big deal?" Meanwhile, Alyssa started a TikTok makeup channel and hit 1,000 followers in a week. The whole family threw a party to celebrate. I once tried to have a serious conversation with my mom. I asked why all the responsibility always fell on me. Why, when Alyssa maxed out credit cards and drained our parents' savings, I was always the first person they called. She looked at me calmly, not angry, and said one sentence that still haunts me. "You have everything. A good job, stability, a wonderful boyfriend. Your sister has nothing. Can't you give just a little?" Nothing? I was the 12-year-old studying through Elisa's tantrums for new toys. I was the girl no one took for a walk after I failed my college entrance exam the first time. I was the only one missing from the family Thanksgiving photo because I had to cover a shift at work. I had everything except my own parents' love. And now, after all those years, they locked me out, erased the gate code, and sent a cold, heartless message like I was some stranger. I wasn't surprised. But it hurt deeply. I still remember the night my father called, his voice shaky with worry. "Zoe, I hate to say this, but if a miracle doesn't happen, we're going to lose the house in about 3 months." I sat still, hand gripping my phone. It was my grandparents' house, the pale green wooden home at the edge of Everett Park, the one where I used to hide in the attic and read to escape the world, where Grandpa taught me how to fix the dishwasher, where Grandma baked apple pies every holiday. I couldn't let it go. Even though I no longer lived there, it was still the last fully intact memory I had of real family. "I'll take over the mortgage. I'll cover the rest," I said. My dad was silent for a few seconds, then exhaled so quietly I almost thought I imagined it. "No, thank you." "No, Zoe, you don't have to." Just silence. Then, "Your mom will send you the bank info." And just like that, it began. No contract, no written agreement, no guarantee, just trust. The kind that I now realize only flowed one way. I canceled my plan to buy a condo near Sloan Lake. I moved out of my 2-bedroom apartment into a tiny studio. I said no to the dream trip to Paris with my boyfriend Marcus and instead took on extra consulting gigs on weekends. I cut my gym membership, morning lattes, and all dining out, except one meal a month, as a permitted luxury. The first month, I transferred $4,750. The next month, the same. No one asked if I was okay. No one mentioned payback. No one invited me to the table when discussing financial decisions about the house. But I kept going, month after month, not missing a single day. I still showed up for Sunday dinners, like tradition, but my presence was always drowned out by Elisa's laughter. She talked about some energy detox retreat in Sedona she got invited to by a friend with positive vibes. I talked about a communications campaign I had just won an award for at a national conference and got a single nod from my mom, her eyes glued to her phone. After one of those dinners, Marcus looked at me and asked, "Do you see that you're being taken advantage of?" I gave a half laugh. It's family. But right then, Jenna's voice echoed in my mind. "Zoe, you are not their relief fund." I ignored my gut. I told myself, I'm preserving memories, I'm doing the right thing. But day by day, it felt like I was pouring water into a cracked jar. Draining and utterly pointless. One day, I showed up at my parents' house earlier than usual. As I entered through the back door, I heard my mother whispering in the kitchen, "Just let Zoe handle it. She's got money. That girl always loves playing the hero." I couldn't breathe. I stepped back, so quietly even I didn't hear my own footsteps. I slipped out like a shadow. That night, I sat by the window of my tiny apartment, staring into the cold, empty dark. I felt like an outsider in my own family. Used, unappreciated, and, worst of all, taken for granted. I opened my phone and reviewed every transaction over the past 18 months. Total amount I had transferred, $85,500. I stared at that number and asked myself, if I had invested that money in myself, in my own life, where would I be now? But then I erased the thought. Not because it wasn't true, but because I knew it was painfully true. And just 1 week later, I got the message about the changed locks, the new code, and a cold note saying they no longer felt safe with me around. I had swallowed 18 months of humiliation. Now it was time they choked on everything they had taken for granted. That Sunday night looked no different from the others. I arrived right at 6 p.m., bringing Dad's favorite bottle of red wine and a loaf of artisan bread from the corner bakery. Mom once said she liked it. Lissa and her husband Kyle were already there, lounging on the sofa like it was their own place. On the coffee table were an open laptop and a folder of documents, things I had never seen at a family dinner. "Oh, hey, you're here," Alyssa said without even looking up. Her eyes stayed glued to the screen. Kyle gave a half-hearted nod. Dinner went by with the usual small talk. Alyssa rambled on about her latest creative startup, selling healing crystals imported from Bali. Dad asked a few polite questions. Mom focused on slicing the chicken pie she made every week. I mentioned the regional award my team had just won for a media campaign. No one responded. Everything seemed normal. Until we moved to the living room for coffee. Dad cleared his throat, tension tight in his voice like a snapped guitar string. "We have a small announcement," he began, then looked at Lissa, who pressed her lips together, trying to hide her excitement. Mom placed a hand on my sister's shoulder, as if to endorse what came next. "Alyssa and Kyle will be moving in with us, just temporarily until they get back on their feet financially." I set my coffee cup down, careful not to make a sound. "Moving in?" I asked, each word slow and deliberate. "Yes," Mom replied, a little hesitant. "They'd just ended their lease, and with the house being so spacious, and it saves money, too." I tried to stay calm. "And the mortgage? Will she be contributing to that?" A heavy silence fell. Kyle ducked his head like he dropped something. Alyssa blinked rapidly. "You know our finances aren't great right now. Besides, you don't even live here anymore," Alyssa said with a smile thinner than tissue paper. I turned to my parents. "I'm still paying for this house. The entire mortgage, every month. I gave up buying my own home because this house was part of Grandma and Grandpa's legacy. And now I find out my sister is moving in, like she owns it?" Dad blinked. "Zoe, you're doing great out there. You've got a stable income, a nice rental, a successful job. Alyssa needs a fresh start. She deserves a safe place to begin again," Mom added. "And you don't really need this house anymore, do you?" My chest tightened. I didn't know what stunned me more, the words themselves or how casually they were said. Alyssa deserves it more than I do? I asked, my voice low, each word cutting like glass. You're everything I've sacrificed? Alyssa scoffed. Here we go again, the scorekeeper. That's so you, Zoe, always counting. Maybe you're more successful, but I'm the one who's actually connected to this house. I stood up. I couldn't take another second. I'm leaving, I said, grabbing my bag. I hope you all enjoy living together. Zoe, my mom called after me. Don't make this a big deal. Family is about sharing. I stopped at the door. Sharing? I've shared my entire life for nearly 2 years, Mom. All of you just shared ways to cut me out of the picture. That night, I didn't cry. I screamed. Inside. The anger didn't explode. It simmered like hot coals under ash. Marcus held me all night. It's time you stop letting them treat you like the solution to every mess they make, he whispered. I nodded. And the next morning, as sunlight poured into our small apartment, I opened my laptop and logged into the bank. My hands trembled slightly, but my heart had never felt steadier. I found the command, cancel auto payment, and I clicked confirm. 3 days after I canceled the mortgage payment, my phone exploded like the entire household was on red alert. The first message came from my mom at 6 a.m. Zoe, I know you're upset, but cutting the money without notice is extreme. We need to talk. By noon, my dad left a 2-minute voicemail, his tone full of frustration. You can't do this. Your family is in crisis and you just turn your back? After everything your mother and I have done for you? I could only laugh. What had they ever done for me? Those words echoed in my mind like a shout in an empty room. That evening, Alyssa tried to video call. I didn't answer. What followed was a barrage of texts. You're destroying everything over some meaningless pride. You always play the victim, but you're the one tearing this family apart. Kyle just got a call from the bank. Are you really going to let us end up on the street? I powered off my phone, but not even a day later, they switched to email. One subject line hit me like a punch. Urgent legal matter, request for cooperation. The sender was Benjamin Cole, a lawyer with a real law firm name in the signature block. I opened the email. The message was short but threatening. I have been retained by the Foster family to address the cancellation of mortgage payments that now pose risk of foreclosure. We request that my client, Ms. Zoe Anderson, contact us immediately to resolve this before it escalates further. I smirked. They hired a lawyer, but no one apologized. No one acknowledged excluding me from the move-in decision. Not a word about the unfairness I had swallowed for 2 years. I called Elena, a law school friend now working at a consulting firm in Boulder. Do they have any legal grounds to sue me? I asked, calmer than I felt. Elena scoffed. None. The house isn't in your name. You didn't sign anything binding. Every payment was voluntary. If they try to take this to court, they'll be asked why you paid for 2 years without any ownership. After that call, I felt a weight lift off me. But the attacks from my family didn't stop. One Friday morning, my boss, Mr. Reynolds, called me into his office. His face was strange, not angry, just cautious. Zoe? I got a strange phone call yesterday afternoon. A woman claimed you were dealing with serious mental health issues and might no longer be fit to work. I froze. Her name? I asked. He said her name was Alyssa Anderson. For a moment, it felt like the ground beneath me cracked open. Alyssa was trying to sabotage my job? I took a deep breath and met my boss's eyes. My family is going through serious personal issues, and I'm the target. But I assure you, my work will not be affected. Mr. Reynolds nodded. I believe you. Your track record speaks for itself. But let me know if you ever need time. I thanked him and walked out of his office, legs shaking, head held high. Once again, I had to protect myself, while my own family plotted behind my back. That night, I received an email from Aunt Becca, my dad's sister, someone who rarely got involved in family matters. Zoe, you don't know the whole story, but Elisa has been rallying the entire family. She said you're planning to take over the house and abandon your parents. Something about it feels off. Can we talk? I replied briefly. I'll tell you everything, but only if you're ready to hear both sides. That weekend, one final message from my mom struck a nerve. The bank sent a foreclosure notice. Are you really going to let us lose the house? I read it, then deleted it. They didn't apologize. They didn't acknowledge what they had done. And I was no longer the ashamed, silent, self-sacrificing doll they once controlled. I scheduled a meeting with attorney Evelyn Grant on a Tuesday morning. Her office was on the 11th floor of a building overlooking downtown Denver, modern, bright, and as emotionally detached as I needed to be while making decisions. After I laid out the entire story, 18 months of payments, the changed locks, and even their hiring of a lawyer to threaten me, she nodded slowly. They have no grounds to sue you, Evelyn said calmly. The house isn't in your name. All payments were voluntary transfers with no binding legal agreement. But I looked at her. If you want full protection, I recommend preparing documentation to show your original intent was temporary support. Do you have any texts, emails, or acknowledgement from them? I nodded. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a message from my dad nearly 2 years ago. He had written, Zoe, thank you for helping us through this time. Once things stabilize, we'll talk about paying you back. Evelyn smiled faintly. Perfect. That message is solid goodwill evidence. It clearly shows this wasn't a no-strings-attached gift. We printed a copy of the message and included my entire bank statement history for the 18 months. Evelyn helped me draft an official response letter to the law firm my family hired, demanding they cease all baseless intimidation and formally declaring all financial support had ended. I walked out of her office not just someone who had stopped a one-way financial stream, but someone who had taken back control. The family thought I'd never dared to claim. The following week, I met Aunt Becca at a small cafe in Capitol Hill. She quietly listened as I told her everything, for the first time, from beginning to end. Do you think, if your daughter did this to you, could you forgive her? I asked. Aunt Becca sighed, placing her hand over mine. Forgiveness doesn't happen over coffee, but understanding why you made that decision? I completely understand. She said my parents still believed I'd come back to save them at the last minute. I wasn't sure whether to feel pity or rage. The next week, I had my quarterly performance review at work. I thought I'd get a few compliments and return to my desk, but no. Zoe, my boss, Mr. Reynolds, said, We're creating a new position, Director of Digital Brand Strategy, and I want you to be the first to receive an offer. I couldn't believe my ears, he continued. The way you've handled crisis, executed campaigns under pressure, no one else compares. This is a well-earned promotion. The offer came with a 30% raise and a flexible budget to build my own team. I nodded yes, nearly bursting with emotion inside. That day, as I stepped out of the building, Denver felt cooler than usual. I bought a cappuccino and sat alone on the sidewalk patio. Watching people pass by, I caught myself smiling. Not a smug grin, but the quiet smile of someone who had just reclaimed their right to define their own worth. When I got home, I opened my laptop and started a new spreadsheet. Personal finances home purchase goal, 6 months. I transferred $3,000 into a separate savings account, the first time since I stopped being an unconditional provider for others. I started researching the housing market, reached out to a realtor, and even enrolled in an online investment finance course. Every action, every step, was a milestone reminding me that I was building a future for myself, not for anyone else. Marcus, my boyfriend, heard about my promotion and pulled me into a long, tight hug. I always knew you'd get here, he whispered. But now, you did it. Not for anyone else, not to prove anything, just because you deserve it. That night, as I lay on the couch staring at the city lights outside the window, I thought, sometimes Freeing yourself doesn't start with shouting or demanding justice. It starts with one click, cancel payment. And from there, everything shifts. About a month after I sent the formal legal notice ending all support, I got a call from Aunt Becca. "Zoe, the bank has listed the house," she said quietly. "They couldn't come up with the money. Your mom cried all night." I said nothing. She sighed. "Your dad tried to apply for an emergency loan but was denied. They owe too much. Alyssa can't co-sign either. Her credit score is practically bottomed out." I felt something drop inside me. Not triumph, but a final piece of sorrow settling to the ground. My grandparents' house, the one tied to every corner of my childhood, was now listed as a distressed property. A young couple bought it through a short sale. They planned to tear out the entire basement and turn it into a playroom for their kids. Aunt Becca told me. As for me, I never went near the house again. I couldn't. The next week, Aunt Becca sent me a photo. My parents moving out, cardboard boxes scattered across the lawn beneath a sold sign. My mother, the one who used to make me polish those windows until my reflection shone like a mirror, was now struggling to pull an old wooden chair down the stairs, her face lost and unfamiliar. They moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment in Lakewood. No backyard, no spacious living room, no guests to entertain. I heard my dad, once proud to say he never worked for anyone, was applying for a part-time job at a small car dealership. And my mom had started selling handmade crafts on Etsy. Alyssa and Kyle crashed at a friend's place, but the arrangement fell apart quickly. They broke up just 3 weeks later. Kyle went back to Minnesota, and Alyssa, according to Becca, got a job as a retail assistant at a shoe store. The first job she'd kept for more than a month since she was 24. One night, I received a text from Alyssa. For the first time, it wasn't blaming or screaming. "Do you hate me?" I stared at the message for a long time, but didn't reply. I didn't hate her. I hated the version of myself who endured all those injustices without ever speaking up. But to reply, I wasn't ready. The next week, I received a handwritten letter from my mom. The handwriting was slanted and familiar, on pale yellow paper, with a faint water stain in the lower corner, like a trace of something that had once been hidden. "Zoe, I don't know where to begin. Maybe you won't even finish reading this, but I need to write it. Not to ask or beg, but to say, I was wrong. So very wrong. I used to think you were so strong, you didn't need love. I never realized. Even the strongest people need to feel seen. You did too much, and I took it all for granted. On our last day in the house, I walked past your old room. The memories came rushing back. The desk, the wall photo, the book you used to fall asleep with. And I realized we lost you a long time ago. I folded the letter. I didn't cry. I wasn't angry. Just quiet. I didn't know what compelled my mom to write that letter. Maybe it was loss, maybe loneliness, or maybe, finally, the truth had hit her like a cold slap. I still haven't responded, but I kept the letter. Not as an apology, but as a marker that maybe one day, when I've healed enough, I'll read it again and know that I no longer hurt. That night, Marcus held me as I told him everything. "You didn't do anything wrong," he whispered. "The family didn't fall apart because you stopped. It fell apart because they never learned how to stand on their own." I nodded. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel responsible for someone else's pain. And to me, that was true freedom. 3 months after I officially closed the chapter with my family, Marcus asked me to move in with him. Not with roses, candles, or dramatic speeches, just a regular Saturday afternoon while we were folding laundry in the living room, and he said, "You're rebuilding your life. I'd like to be a part of it, if you're ready." I used to think of moving in together as something far off, but after everything, every hurt, betrayal, and step I took to rise again, I knew I wasn't the same person. I nodded, without hesitation. We moved into a two-bedroom apartment in Aurora. Nothing fancy, but warm enough. Morning light streamed into the kitchen every day, and I carved out a small corner just for reading, a luxury I had sacrificed during the 2 years I financially carried others. I started sleeping well again. Marcus stayed the same, never pushing me to talk, never trying to fix me, just there, steady and solid. One autumn afternoon, I received a text from my mom. "If you're willing, I'd like to invite you to lunch. Not to ask for anything, just to see you. As your mother, not the person who hurt you." I stared at the message for nearly 10 minutes. Finally, I replied, "Saturday, 1 p.m. Bramble Cafe." I arrived on time. My mom was already seated at the window table, wearing the old green cardigan I used to hate as a kid. She looked noticeably older, not just from age, but because life was finally collecting on what had once been borrowed from someone else's sacrifice. "Aisle out," I sat down, calmly, but not warmly. She smiled, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. "Thank you for coming," she began. "I don't expect forgiveness, I just want to take responsibility." I stayed quiet. For the first time in years, I saw her without her defenses, no excuses, no avoiding. I spent my whole life protecting Alyssa from reality, and in doing that, I left you alone with all the weight. I thought because you were strong, you wouldn't get hurt. I was wrong. She looked up at me, her eyes wet. "I don't expect us to go back, but I hope maybe we can start something new, if you're willing." I set my teacup down, breathed in, slow and steady. "You have no idea how many nights I didn't sleep, how many times I stared at my bank statements wondering if I was being stupid," I said slowly. "I lived like a shadow in my own family, and when I stopped being that shadow, I was called selfish." She lowered her head. She didn't argue, she didn't deny, she just listened. "I'm not sure what our relationship will look like," I continued, "but if it exists, it has to be based on respect. No more silence, no more roles. Do you understand?" She nodded. "This time, I'll let you set the terms." We talked for nearly an hour. We didn't unravel the past, we didn't dissect everything, but it was enough for me to see the first cracks in the wall. That night, when I told Marcus, he simply smiled. "You don't have to forgive her if you're not ready," he said. "But you just rewrote the rules, and now you hold the keys." That sentence stayed with me all night. I don't know if my mom has truly changed. I'm not sure if the relationship is worth rebuilding, but I do know this. I'm no longer the fixer, the cleaner, the silent sufferer. From now on, any relationship I have will be one I choose, not one I'm bound to by blood. A year after I canceled the mortgage payments and severed the chain of inherited dependency, Marcus and I moved into our first home, one that truly belonged to us. Not a luxurious mansion, but a cozy 3-bedroom wooden house in the suburbs of Golden, with a sunlit backyard, a small loft I turned into a reading nook, and a kitchen spacious enough for Marcus to indulge his weekend cooking passion. We painted every door by hand, planted flowers along the white fence, and burst out laughing in frustration with our first attempt at assembling an IKEA chair. Every simple thing, every little detail, brought me a feeling I hadn't felt in years. Safety. In this home, no one saw me as a living bank. No one treated sacrifice as an obligation. No one used love as a bargaining chip. I began to truly live, not just exist to please others, not trading my self-worth for conditional affection. I still keep in touch with my mom. At a healthy distance, we text every few weeks. Sometimes it's a photo of a meal she made, sometimes a holiday greeting, but with every exchange, I maintain clear boundaries. "One day," she wrote, "I know I'm no longer the center of your life, but I hope I can still be a small part of it, if that's okay with you." I read the message and smiled softly. No more resentment, no more burden, just healthy selectivity. As for Alyssa, we still haven't spoken. Aunt Becca said she moved in temporarily with a friend in Fort Collins and works as a marketing assistant for a small furniture company. It seems like she's trying to stand on her own for the first time without a safety net. I don't congratulate her. I don't judge. I just let the distance do its work. One April afternoon, I sat on the back porch, sunlight filtering through the thin white curtains, Marcus playing soft guitar in the living room, and I realized I had moved on. No more craving recognition, no more need to rescue anyone, no more clinging to roles others assigned me. I didn't just reclaim my life, I found myself. Not the self tied to monthly checks, not the self striving for compliments at family dinners, but the self who knows her worth, who knows when to say enough, and who dares to choose herself, even if it upsets others. One day, Marcus took me to the backyard and pointed at a small patch of soil near the fence. I think this would be a great spot for a cherry tree. I heard it symbolizes new beginnings. I nodded. And we planted it. Just as I had replanted my life, on fresh ground, free from the toxins of old expectations. I don't regret the years I spent sacrificing. They're proof I once loved, even if in the wrong way, but from those mistakes I learned the greatest lesson. True love doesn't demand that you sacrifice yourself. And self-worth doesn't come from how much you give, but from how well you know when to say no. That day, I sat down at the desk in my reading room and opened the brown leather journal I used during the hardest times. I wrote a single line in black ink. I don't need to be chosen. I choose myself. Zoe's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes, to find peace, we must step away from our own family, not because we don't love them, but because we choose to love ourselves first. In a world where sacrifice is often treated as duty, Zoe bravely redrew her boundaries, rejected the role of the caretaker, and built a life rooted in respect, not emotional debt. It's not just a journey of healing, but a return to self-worth. What do you think about Zoe's journey? Would you do the same if you were in her shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful and unexpected family stories.